really, but you guys should be able to see me, and just listening is usually the best anyway. Oh, I've got a voice for radio. Oh, no. I've got a face for radio. That's how it goes. Anyway, all right, well, welcome back. It's another episode of the project, the Maturity Project. This is number 26, 27. Today's episode is on not everybody's going to go with you. Not everybody's going to take the journey with you. And what does that mean, like overall? And I guess that's kind of such a cliche thing at this point where I say that, what does this mean? What do I mean by that? Everybody's not going to go on the journey with you. It doesn't mean that you're going to have like whoever's there with you right now in your life, to whatever capacity you guys are associated with each other, doesn't mean that they will actually take the journey with you throughout life. And it could just be that you disembark to some degree of the compartment of behavior or thinking or outlook. You just depart a little bit out of that. They're not going with you to the way you think they are now. So I think it's interesting how much we try to act like everything's so permanent. Hell, even life to the individual, like, whenever we die, but we have our legacy. And if you've lived in such a way that you've inspired people to tell your story, that's your legacy. That's what it is. And the more the story means something, the more likely it is to affect somebody to do something. And that's where legacies gain traction in their own. That's where they start creating credibility and value to even give a damn about a legacy. Is it needs to be able to be used in a way that can make a difference for somebody else, and that's when we care. So back to not everybody's going to join you on that. It depends on what you want. You almost certainly at this point don't know exactly what you want either. You have an idea about what you want. You've likely have got a significant degree of understanding about what you want to the level that you've thought of it. But life has a way of showing you from another perspective that things are actually a little bit different, bigger, or whatever. There's more to it. There's there's something that you just weren't aware of. That's very common. It's just, when do we get that experience? See, this entire channel is dedicated to helping you expose these kind of areas to just think a little bit differently, because you access the world differently when you have that adaptive thinking model, where you're like, yes, I see everything right now the way that I see it, the way that I understand it. I take into account for everything that I can, which is a lot of inner work anyway. And then you get to the point where you're like, well, I guess this is it. But you remain like with this very highly sensitive radar to identify other things that will be something that's just out of your understanding at the moment. And that'll start giving you access to these other paradigms, these other shifters, where you're like, wow, I was actually just staring things down from that one way. And you weren't able to see around the pole. I'm sure you guys have seen that illustration where you see somebody standing, they're looking into a pole, and then they're saying that I understand everything that's around this, but on the other side of the pole there's something there that it was visually understandable and acceptable, that would be a pleasure for that person to find, or a rewarding thing for them to be able to discover, but it's on the other side of the pole and they can't see it because it's at enough distance back from the pole that it blocks their view. And then it turns out that if you keep going back further and further and further, there's a big part of the world that's behind that pole that's unable to be seen because you have not shifted your perspective. So that's a pretty neat little illustration. It says a lot with very little effort. Perhaps my laborious effort to even recant it or to verbally illustrate it it was probably more laborious. But anyway, all right, so not everybody's going to go with you on the goal, or on this journey. I've got childhood friends I still stay in touch with, but they're not on the journey with me as they once were, right? They're still around. We talk, we have a relationship, but how deep is that relationship, and how often do I access that relationship in the day-to-day of my goals, in my pursuit of my goals? If I'm wanting to increase my sales and to work on, that part of my need for a business goal, then being on the phone with somebody that's going to be talking about, non-financial opportunities, let's say they're just talking about what they did over the weekend, But I care deeply for this person. We've known each other forever, like there's just a lot of rapport there. But that conversation is not going to be, that's not going to be the phone number I'm going to dial whenever I've got to figure out how to increase my sales. I don't have the desire to sit in that conversation when the need for my goal is higher than just catching up. You see what I mean? This is just, again, it's just a small example of how they're not going to join you on it. That doesn't mean that they're not going to have some sort of contribution. But if you're so attached to your next steps being validated by your friends and people around you, going with you and being there to the level that they were in the past, then that can be an anchor for your opportunities, because it will be distracting to consider that they're not, that you need to change your behaviors in some way or change something to get them to join you. The concern that you're going to lose that in your life, or just going to lose that type of relationship, becomes a limiting factor on your opportunities to grow. Now, I'm not saying get these people out of your life by any means. I'm not saying that. I am saying that, it's just that people have a habit of, and it's not even necessarily a habit, it's just our lives are so incredibly dynamic that if you look at 360 degrees of who we are as a person, you'll have skill sets and adaptations for the environment based through the perspective of that particular area of our existence, right? So if you're always in the conversation about money, you're likely going to notice when people are talking about money around you when you're in public. If you're really in tune to sexuality, then you will pick up on specific things that most people don't notice. It could be in the flirting process and things like that. Like that guy's flirting with her, or she's flirting with him, or whatever. It could very well be something like that. Your radar is more sensitive for it. But then those trait values go into our personality and our character, to who we're known to be and who we actually are to ourselves. And then you have this big variable or these different variables that come together that create that distinctive value about who you are. We get conned into thinking that everybody is like us, or the people that are close to us are like us, our best friends are exactly like us, and that there not be any nuance of differences, or maybe even exceeding a nuance of differences, but having greater differences. We have the way of overlooking it or looking past it. That's what I mean by the bigger value and the bigger picture of who we are. So if you expect the person in your life, because they don't bring that level of, let's say it's a very close friend of yours, or possibly your partner or your lover or whomever, and you have a goal that you're after, and you're like, you know what, I'm sharing this with that person, and then they don't hear me, right? That's deflating to you, and if you put a lot of weight on that, it can also cause you to slow down or reduce your efforts to get there, to where your goals are taking you. So that's what I mean by if they're close, you just understand and accept that they're not necessarily going to be there the way that you envisioned they be there, or the way that you might have, when I say fantasized about being there, I don't mean that and the sexual connotation of it. It's more of the just spending time daydreaming. To me, fantasizing has a little bit more depth and development than daydreaming, but it also typically has a different intent. Daydreaming sometimes just takes you, and you don't really realize you're doing it, and you're just off in thought. And then, fantasizing something that is willful, intentional, you're creating in your mind. That's the way that I typically have seen it anyway. All right. Well, don't be too attached in closing for this. Don't be too attached to people being there, everybody being there the way that you expect them to be there, or the way that you've known them to. As you go through this education, you start to identify how what I'm talking about is such a big sphere of existence, and how we can better understand our experiences with other people, so that we can live more of a fuller life, and to know that because you got beat up and you're not having a great day, and I mean beat up, typically I mean that by non-physical, but I mean just like the day kind of kicked your butt, or something that you were really attached to really just disappointed you or put you down or whatever. So that's what I mean by beat up. But I mean, hell, you could physically be beat up too, but I don't want to digress and to over establish that particular side of it, as much as like maybe if you're a pro fighter, you look for it. You want to get beat up because you want to get better, and you want to find out how you're going to get better. And the best way to do that is when you take action on something and it is a failure of that action to get to goal, right? You weren't able to do it. That the reason why you weren't able to do it is the thing that stopped you. I know it makes stupid sense, right? It's like, yeah, no shit. But here's the thing about it. That thing that stopped you is the lesson that you need to learn, and you need to learn how to overcome it, not just so you can make traction and progress over it, but that thing is essential in achieving your goal. That thing has value about your goal that is beyond what you currently see that's stopping you. But that thing that stopped you will be a block in other parts of your life, and you want to find those things because that's a piece of you that's missing that you have to develop, and you have to get it. So the thing that stopped you is a piece of you that's missing. Now, that piece of you is how do you adapt and how do you work with it? That's what you want to identify. If you can identify that, now you're creating a great degree of power, because you're not going to be so upset when these things are stopping you, and you're going to continue your actions to become successful. You're very much likely to do that. So that's what I mean by all that. Okay, well, hopefully that's insightful. In summary, again, it's just that, not everybody's going to go with you. I hope that you've taken something out of today's video. I hope that you do like and share this video. And by the way, hope is desire without structure. That's my working definition of it, which I've mentioned in other videos, but may as well say it again today. Hope is desire without structure. Because if you had the structure and strategy to achieve it, you wouldn't use hope. You would just talk about the method. You'd be like, I'll get there by, even possibly a timeline. So, all right, with that, not to digress, share the video with somebody in your life you'd like to get a conversation like this started with. You don't have to necessarily use the subject of this, but perhaps this particular video would be the thing that cracks open the doorway for that conversation to take place between you and the other person. So, use it as a conversation starter. You could use it as the fertile ground of conversation that can make the change. Be aware of the information you put into your mind. You are feeding your future by what you give it. Be forgiving to yourself. You don't need to beat yourself up too much, but then again, maybe you do. Maybe that's the lesson you need to have, is to beat yourself up enough to possibly accept that you do have limitations, but those limitations are something that you can overcome if you put that in the right perspective when you beat yourself up. But with that, I just really hope that this conversation does get something greater accomplished versus just me sitting in my car having a conversation. So comment in the comment section you got something out of today. You could always just say thank you or whatever it is that comes to mind when you want to in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and again, share it. All right, guys. Well, remember, we do have a world to change. We got a world to get to, but we really got to get to ourselves first. So with that, I'll catch you next time. See ya.